Here is The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg.
Our next guest needs no introduction, so I'm not going to introduce him. He's Bob Woodward. Everyone knows who Bob Woodward is, and he wrote, of course, this new best-selling, #1 best-selling book. And Bob, welcome. Welcome to the Atlantic Festival. Thanks for coming on. Hey, Bob, I have a lot of questions, and we have a short period of time. I want to ask you something about something the president just said in response to a question. He said, we're going to have to see what happens. And he was responding to a question about whether he'd commit to a peaceful transfer of power. I wonder, you're one of the world's leading Trumpologists at this point. I'm wondering if that struck you as a new level of tension or a new level of norm breaking on the part of this president?
Well, first of all, I tend to not worry about his norm breaking because he was elected to break norms. And I think the accusation, he's breaking norms, is a little, it doesn't reflect an understanding of why he was elected in 2016. People love the lack of decorum. They don't like it when people like you and me in the media seem self-satisfied and smug. But here, as best I can tell.
But this is not an issue of decorum. He's saying that this is not just mere decorum or norm breaking. He's saying that maybe there will be violence if I don't like the results of what happens in November.
Yes, I agree, and I think we're in store for a quadruple train wreck almost no matter what happens. He has set the table in a very dramatic way, saying, we can't count these votes. We're not going to be able to count the votes. We're not going to be able to trust what comes, and particularly if he loses. So I don't know how we right the ship on this. I am horrified, and I think the stance he has taken reflects such a dangerous approach to the job of being president. He's supposed to protect the people. He's supposed to protect our institutions and our laws. He's supposed to tell the truth. He is supposed to be, as I quote General Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, in the first couple of years of Trump's presidency, saying that Trump has no moral compass. I think he has no moral compass. I think, as I quote Dr. Fauci, saying Trump is obsessed with one thing, and that is being reelected. And this is an extraordinary time, and I hope you and all the people at the Atlantic and all of us at the Washington Post and every media organization are going to keep reporting this story about Trump and what's going to happen in the next 7 weeks.
Stay on this for a minute. The very obvious question to you is, has Trump gone significantly farther than Richard Nixon ever went? I love hearing you on this subject. I could listen to you all day on it, but spend a couple of minutes on Nixon v. Trump.
Well, but as you know, and for a straight reporter, you need to look at each presidency as it is, and the comparison is fun, and historians are going to have a field day. Nixon was clearly a criminal. Criminal evidence has not been presented about Trump at this point, though some people interpret the record as that. But think about it. I have to go back to this. The first interview I did with him for this book was December 5th of last year, so it's 10 months ago. Go into the Oval Office, put down my tape recorder on the Resolute desk and say, this is on the record. I'm going to record everything. I hope to talk to you many, many times. I didn't think it would be 19, frankly, in 9 hours, but I'm glad it was. And it's going to come out, all of this before the election. And he said, fine. On page 49 of that transcript, I asked him the obvious question, what do you think the job of the president is? And he said, well, the job is to protect the people. He has failed in a way that is a catastrophe to protect the people. I think he fully understands the powers that he has as president, but the microphone, the bully pulpit, in releasing audios on this, the microphone is really a microscope, and we see into his attitudes. I was able to ask him about all of the issues of the day. I was able to press him. If you've read this, Jeff, you're one of the top Trump watchers. Do you have any idea why he would let me keep pressing him on issues? Because I know from his key staff people, when he makes a decision or says something, he will not let people really pressure him. And I did. Why did he allow that? Do you know?
I do know, but I'm the interviewer now, Bob. But I will answer you. I do know.
Okay.
You're a Washington monument. No, you're a Washington monument. He respects fame. He doesn't actually know what you've done. He's never read anything you've written, but he knows that you're important and knows that you're famous. So he has respect. Fame knows fame in a kind of way, and so I actually think that's part of it. He also, at some part of his brain understood that you know a lot of presidents, and so there's probably some vague curiosity. But again, that's only very vague because he doesn't really have curiosity about other people. But it's an interesting look. It is one of the questions that people ask why he would cooperate with you. I think one of the answers about why he cooperated with you is embedded in the book, and it has to do with Jared Kushner. And I wanted to ask you something about that. There's a lot of strange and wondrous things in this book about this White House. One of the strangest passages and one of the most revealing passages in the whole book concerns your conversation with Jared Kushner, in which he gave you sort of a quasi-literary guide to understanding Donald Trump. And he mentioned Alice in Wonderland, obviously. But the one I wanted to ask you about, because this is so bizarre, Jared Kushner talked about Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoonist who's pro-Trump. And Scott Adams, in his book, Win Bigly, Persuasion in a World Where Facts Don't Matter, talks about intentional wrongness persuasion. And I thought at that point in the book, somewhere around the 300, I forgot exactly where, 300 pages or so in, I thought, okay, now Bob is really getting down to something. Talk about intentional wrongness persuasion and Jared Kushner's understanding of this idea.
Yes, the way Kushner explains it, I'm glad you asked because I think it's central and fascinating. Kushner's explanation, which I quote him in the book saying, is the controversy elevates message. Namely, if you have a controversy that is more or less on your side, it's going to help you. And the example he cites is the economy, where Trump comes out and says it's the best economy in the world. And then there's a dispute, and all the fact checkers come along and say, no, in the 1950s it was better, or the Roman Empire, or something like that. And Kushner says that controversy, that dispute, the average person out there, Biden supporter, Trump supporter, not following all the news, but sees this and then says, well, the economy's pretty good, and whether it's the best in the world does not really affect their lives. What does affect their lives at this point before the virus is that it's basically a good economy. And if you think about it, it's a clever strategy. Get into these fights, which Kushner talks about, and if they are on favorable ground, it will help Trump, because the Democrats and the media will come in and dispute things in a very technical, the fact-checking mentality, which is important. It's got to be done. But if it's on a broad issue like the economy, or as we are now facing the Supreme Court issue, and Trump is just loves this, because we're not talking about the virus. Oh, by the way, 1,000 people died today. Part of this controversy elevates message is controversy kind of nullifies something that's been going on for months, namely, 200,000 people dead in this country. If a year ago I said to you, we're going to face something like that in the year 2020, you would think I was on some real heavy drug. And that's what's happened. It's gone on month after month. And now we can have a discussion about the Supreme Court. And Trump thinks, and I think he may be right, this is favorable ground for him, where the virus is not a good subject to have a debate or discussion about.
You've written a lot of books about Washington, and you've met some pretty cynical people. This passage, this 3 or 4 page passage, is among the most cynical things, not you, but Jared Kushner, being more cynical than I think I've ever seen anyone in Washington be. Am I wrong? Or am I putting them in a separate category when they're just on a continuum?
Well, let's see. Gordon Liddy, who ran the Watergate burglary team, was pretty cynical about things. He thought if he could shred the $100 bills in his pocket, they never would find out who financed Watergate. So there's a lot of cynicism.
So is Jared Kushner just a Harvard version? Is Jared Kushner just some Harvard version of G. Gordon Liddy then?
Let's not tag it to Harvard. It's Kushner. Remember, and I make this point in the book, that he's de facto chief of staff. We are now on the 4th chief of staff that Trump has had. Kushner has been a constant. I report he sees the president every day. He is married to Ivanka. They are both senior advisors. And this is, after Trump, the most powerful position in the government, don't you think? Does anyone have any more power than Kushner? Not in my reporting.
Right. Well, and he can't be fired, necessarily.
Well, he could be fired. I mean, he could go back to
It's hard to fire your son-in-law.
Well, Trump does some pretty unimaginable things. And
could I add, stay on that for a minute?
Okay.
Go on. No, stay on the pretty unimaginable things. It just really struck me as a. I want to ask you this point blank, the thing that everybody talks about, which is you've had a lot of exposure to him. Do you think he's mentally unstable?
Well, see, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I don't make that judgment.
But you're a human being who's met a lot of people.
No. But you see, that's what I think we've got to get out of trying to play psychiatrist, or in our business, moralist, or political opportunist, or making political judgments, making moral judgments about people who are Trump supporters. They're columnists who write for your publication and the Washington Post, and they say there's only one way to look at this. Any decent person will look at it this way. I don't think that way. I think it is a giant mistake, and it feeds this notion of elitism in the media. And what we need, I know Trump supporters who are financial advisors, business people, people who are workers, military people, law enforcement people, and if they accost me or say, they like Trump or something like that, I give them a free copy of the book and I say, read it. You don't have to agree with me. I can understand that people are not going to agree with me. And it is very important to give people that opportunity. And they're going to take it or they're not going to take it. But I think for people who do work like us, like your great piece about Trump and the military and things he said that people knew about. I knew some of it, quite frankly. I did not have it firsthand in a way I could use it, but I heard those stories about what Trump said at the gravesite of John Kelly's son, and I heard it from two senior cabinet officers that they heard that from Kelly. I never was able to get it firsthand, but Trump has he will just say anything about anyone. And in the case of your story, he realizes how damaging it is, so he denies it, and people say they never heard him say it, and so forth. Look, he calls people suckers and losers all the time. He labels people in a way that the idea Rex Tillerson is Secretary of State. Lots of people are critical of him. I report that people in the State Department didn't like the way he did his job. But for Trump to hire that man out of retirement and give him the #1 cabinet post in the government and then turn on him and say publicly he's dumb as a rock, unimaginable. I'm sure you've had people who've left the Atlantic and you may have had some negative feelings about them, but would you ever say anything that is equivalent? It reflects the failure in the ability of Trump to build a team, to listen to other people, to accept the political and moral responsibility of being president of the United States, and the treatment of the military. I have some support in my book about what he said about generals, and he tries to be cute, and he says, well, I'm not really saying the generals are stupid, but anyone who said that is stupid. So we have a one-man band presidency. He does what he wants. When you get into this, as you know, you have to ask the question, is this a fundamental attitude he has? And does he really think the military or lots of people who died in Vietnam and other battles are suckers and losers? I don't know. I can't, he's not on the, but fully conceivable he would say this about anybody if it comes into his mind. And this is the problem, and this is what drove people like Mattis and Tillerson and head of intelligence Dan Coates crazy, because there would be no orders, there would be no direction, there would be no kind of theory of the case. What are we doing here in this administration? It was all Trump's impulses. And can you imagine working for somebody like that?
Yeah, I would love to continue, as would our home audience, but we have to leave it there. And I wanted to thank you for doing this. There's a lot of fascinating information in this book. You could buy a copy of Rage, along with books by our other festival speakers at our Atlantic Festival page at bookshop.org. Bob, you're a legend. Thank you for joining us, and congratulations on this book. We really appreciate it.